Dinosaurs seem to have returned to haunt the earth. We see them almost everywhere. What weird and wonderful animals they were. All different kinds, from giants to midgets. Children begin to learn about dinosaurs almost as soon as they start school. Those people with an adventurous spirit would give almost anything to find a real, live dinosaur somewhere in the world. But of course, mainstream scientists say that is impossible. Evolutionists have long conjectured that dinosaurs were part of a theoretical great age of the reptiles about 200 million years ago. According to their theory, dinosaurs became extinct about 70 million years ago, and man did not evolve until about 4 million years ago. So no man could ever have seen a live dinosaur. However, a number of exciting new discoveries indicate that man and dinosaurs may have lived together in the not-too-distant past. Modern man may have to totally rethink theories of how these great creatures fit into the history of the human race. For thousands of years, ancient peoples have drawn the animals that they have seen and hunted. Some of them picture prehistoric animals, such as the mammoth and the woolly rhinoceros. Even the walls of the Grand Canyon contain ancient rock carvings made long before the white man came to the area. Some researchers believe that one carving is a crude sketch of a dinosaur. Even though the rock is quite weathered, one can still see what resembles the characteristic upright posture, long neck, and long tail. Whether this was meant to depict a dinosaur or not, we do know that ancient peoples all over the world have told of huge reptilian creatures strikingly like the dinosaurs. The ancient Europeans called them dragons. Could it be that these ancient legends are based on creatures that really existed? Many do sound like sober accounts of actual events. There are a number of stories in the mythology of ancient Sumer that date back to at least 3000 BC. One of the best preserved tells of the hero Gilgamesh, who decided to make a name for himself by traveling to a distant land to fell cedar trees for his city. He reached the place with 50 volunteers and discovered a huge dragon, which devoured trees and reeds, was fearsome to see, and had terrible teeth. Gilgamesh killed it and cut off its head for a trophy. Even the Bible seems to mention such creatures. Few people realize it, but in the book of Job, there is an accurate description of a dinosaur. In Job 40 we read, "Behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee. He eateth grass as an ox. His strength is in his loins. His force is in the muscles of his belly. He moveth his tail like a cedar tree. His bones are like bars of iron. He lieth under the shady trees in the covert of the reed and swamps." This is just a small part of the description of this mighty creature. Some have claimed that this animal is an elephant or a hippopotamus, but they certainly do not have a tail like the thick trunk of a cedar tree. Behemoth is described as the largest and mightiest animal on land, created to show man the awesome power of God. In the ancient writings about Babylon, there is at least one explicit reference to a live dragon. The record reads, "And in the same place there was a great dragon, which they of Babylon worshipped. And the king said unto Daniel, Wilt thou also say that this is of brass? Lo, he liveth, he eateth and drinketh. Thou canst not say that he is no living God, therefore worship him." The ancient stories of India often mention dinosaur-like animals. When the famous conqueror Alexander the Great was assaulting some of the cities of India, he found many great reptiles which the Indians kept in caves and worshipped. The Indians begged Alexander not to bother the animals, and so he agreed. When the army was marching past one of the caves, the great reptile heard the sound and stuck its head out. It hissed so loud and emitted such gusts of rage that everyone was terrified. They estimated that it was over 100 feet long. In China, the dragon is the national symbol. Here, too, some of the most ancient artworks of dragons closely resemble some of the known dinosaurs. Ancient Chinese books tell of people using dragon's blood, fat, brains, and saliva for medicine. Today we know that at least some of the dinosaurs reproduced by laying eggs. Likewise, the Chinese believed that dragons laid eggs. In fact, a large, light, hollow one was said to have been found in the Great River, and another was found that was very heavy and sounded as if it contained water when they shook it. Some ancient books even tell of an early Chinese family that bred dragons, which the emperors used for pulling their chariots on special occasions. Over the centuries, Chinese artists came to draw the dragon with many ornamental horns and coils to fit the elaborate designs of their pottery, embroidery, and carving. Like many other peoples, their belief was so strong that they even designed their ships to resemble the dragons of the sea. The Scandinavian countries had about as many tales of dragons as anywhere in the world. One ancient Scandinavian legend told of a dragon which had a big body like an ox. It had 2 long back legs like a frog's and 2 short front legs. Its whole body was covered with scales. It had monstrous jaws, and it could leap like a frog. This sounds amazingly like several known dinosaurs. Paleontologists actually do think that some of these beasts could use their powerful hind legs to leap. Many great heroes supposedly killed a dragon. There is the story of Beowulf, who slew a dragon who lived near the sea, and St. George, who killed a dragon which lived in a cave. Although medieval and Renaissance artists often depicted these animals with fanciful appendages, the dragons often look remarkably similar to modern reconstructions of known types of dinosaurs. A 10th century Irish writer recorded an encounter with a large beast which is reminiscent of a stegosaurus. He described it as having iron nails on its tail, which pointed backwards, a head shaped somewhat like a horse's, and thick, hideous legs with iron claws. The city of Nerluc in France was renamed in the honor of the killing of a dragon there. Some of the details of the beast sound similar to the Triceratops, for it was said to have been armed with tusks that were sharp like pointed swords. The body was larger than an ox, and it lay in wait in the river. In the 1500s, a well-known scientific book actually still listed dragons as living but extremely rare animals. Also, a famous scientist of the time, Ulysses Aldrovandus, carefully documented an encounter between one of these nearly extinct reptiles and a peasant named Baptista. The poor monsters had become so reduced in numbers and size that on May 13, 1572, this simple Italian herdsman killed a hissing dragon near Bologna simply by knocking it on the head. Its description is remarkably similar to the small dinosaur Tanystropheus. Ancient peoples also reported dragons that could fly. The famous Greek historian and explorer Herodotus told about flying reptiles in Egypt that sound similar to the Rhamphorhynchus. He correctly described their snake-like body and their bat-like wings. At the entrance to a narrow gorge, he was shown many piles of bones of those that had been killed. The folklore of the Sioux Indian tribe tells of a party of Sioux warriors who were out hunting during a thunderstorm. They saw a huge, flying, bird-like creature get hit by lightning and fall to the ground. After several days of searching, they found what was left of the creature. It had large claws on its feet and its wings, and its beak was long and sharp. There was a long, bony crest on its head, and it had a wingspan of over 20 feet. The description perfectly matches the extinct pteranodon. The Indians had never seen a bird like it before. They called it the Thunderbird, and it has appeared in Indian tales ever since. Flying reptiles were also reported in Europe in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, and an authority reported sighting a flying reptile near Mount Pilatus in Switzerland as late as 1649. If the many different stories of dragons are based on some fact, then the typical drawings of dragons we see today may actually be a composite drawing from memories of several different types of large reptiles. After the animals had become extinct or extremely rare, storytellers would add additional mythological features to make the dragon seem even more marvelous and magical. Dinosaurs are just one of many types of animals that have become extinct because of the changing ecological factors on the Earth. In the last 350 years alone, almost 400 species have disappeared. The great alligators and crocodiles are now rather small and almost extinct. But it was not long ago that they grew to over 20 feet long. They are among the last surviving relatives of the great dinosaurs. There are still some very large reptiles called Komodo dragons on some of the Indonesian islands. They too have been known to grow over 20 feet long and eat deer and pigs. When Marco Polo, the famous explorer, visited the island of Madagascar about 1290 AD, the inhabitants were very sure that some enormous bird lived on the island. But until recently, scientists were sure that it was a myth. In 1967, they discovered it was true after all. They found the bones and eggs of gigantic birds over 10 feet tall. In New Zealand, the remains of even bigger birds were found. They were killed off for meat by the Maoris. In the same way, man may have been responsible for killing off the last of the remaining dinosaurs for meat, and because they were a menace. The world is by no means thoroughly explored. It is true that we know almost all of its geography, but because a country is on the map does not mean that we know all about its inhabitants. Scientists are still discovering new animals every year. Explorers are still venturing into remote areas of the world in hopes of finding a number of puzzling, rarely seen beasts. Aborigines in Australia have reported an animal similar to the dinosaur Struthiomimus. And in northern Rhodesia, there has been reported an animal similar to a Ceratosaurus that attacks elephants and rhinos. And reports of large, unknown animals still come from peoples living near large rainforests. A good deal of attention has been paid to the deep lake of Loch Ness in the Highlands of Scotland. For centuries, people have reported seeing one or more large but timid animals swimming there. Though people have sometimes been able to take sonar readings and photographs of it, no one has provided clear evidence of just what it is. The description closely resembles the plesiosaurus, which is a water-dwelling type of dinosaur. Similar creatures have been reported in Canada, parts of the U.S., Scandinavia, Ireland, and Russia. Even the Bible mentions a great sea animal which Job had seen, Leviathan, the largest and fiercest creature in the sea. The description of its strong jaws, terrible teeth, and fast swimming ability remind us of the huge Kronosaurus. In every part of the world, ships have sent reports of having sighted various types of sea monsters. Some resemble huge eels. Others look very much like the various types of plesiosaurs. Ancient artwork shows that man has been familiar with them for a very long time. Even rather recently, fishing vessels have detected clear silhouettes of strange, large animals moving at great depths. An oceanographic research ship captured an eel larva that was 6 feet long. The adult eel would have been anywhere from 100 to 180 feet long. And in 1977, a Japanese fishing vessel even netted part of what some scientists believe to be a plesiosaur carcass. Regardless of whether there are any types of dinosaurs still living today, we have seen intriguing evidence that dinosaurs have lived at the same time as man in the past, despite the fact that evolutionists dogmatically say it is impossible. These findings certainly suggest that there is a very serious error in the current theory of evolution, which has been taught throughout the world for the last 200 years. It is hoped that this evidence will spur further scientific research, for a whole new view is needed of the evolutionary theory and the dinosaur's place in history.